السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته وأهلا ومرحبا
Peace be with you.
بكم
Welcome
مشاهدينا
again,
الكرام
our
وكل
dearest
عام
viewers.
وأنتم بخير في جميع الوطن
Greetings to you
الإسلامي
all. Be safe and sound
وفي
all
جميع
over the
العالم
Islamic nation and all
أينما
over the world,
كنتم
wherever you
وأينما
are,
يصلكم إرسال قناة إقرأ
wherever
الفضائية.
you receive the
أهلا
signals of
ومرحبا
Iqra
بكم
satellite
في
channel.
رسائل من الحج
Welcome to messages
ويردد
from
بكم
pilgrimage
أرحب
on your
بالشيخ
behalf. I
إبراهيم
welcome
السيود
Dr. Ibrahim
إمام وخطيب
Al-Suwaid.
مسجد بن حمد
He is
في
the
حي الصفا
preacher
بجدة.
of
أهلا وسهلا
Hay
بالشيخ
Safa
إبراهيم
in
وكل عام وأنت
Jeddah.
بخير.
Happy returns to the Islamic nation.
يا رب إن شاء الله تعالى. طبعا اليوم هو يوم العيد.
Today is the feast, is the Eid,
هناك عدة رسائل
and several
في
messages
هذا اليوم وشعائر يقوم بها الحجاج.
are to be sent to pilgrims today, the great pilgrimage day,
الأمور التي يقوم
for
بها
several
فيها.
functions made by the
وأيضاً
pilgrims today.
لغير الحجاج
And it's also for the other non-pilgrims, for the sacrifice, the prayers of the feast.
الأضحية.
And today is one of the days for those who want to sacrifice the animals. So let us today talk and share with our viewers some messages from pilgrimage about the sacrifice animal.
بارك الله فيك أستاذ بندر.
God bless you, Mr. Bender.
نكبر كما كان الرسول
First of
عليه
all,
الصلاة
let us
والسلام
start with the takbir, with the utterance of the greatest, as the Prophet did.
الله أكبر.
God is greater, God is greater, there is no God except God. God is greater, and all the praise is to God.
والحمد لله
Gra-
كثيرا
God is great and the greatest, and peace and all praise be on our Prophet Muhammad
وسلاما دائمين إلى يوم الدين.
until the day of
الحمد
judgment.
لله ثم الحمد لله. حمدا
All the
وافيا
praise are for God, for all the rewards.
بجلال وجهك وعظيم سلطانك.
My God, all the praise is to you, as
حمدا يليق بجلال
it
وجهك
fits
وعظيم
your
سلطانك.
majesty
حمدا نلقى به
in the
أجرا
heavens.
الله به
We
عنا
praise you
وزرا
in a way that you
ويجعله
forgive
لنا
our
عند
sins
الوجود.
and make us
ونصلي
rewarded in the
ونسلم على
life
أشرف
hereafter.
خلق الله.
And all the praise and peace be with his messenger Muhammad, the last prophet, Muhammad bin Abdullah. May God lay peace on him and all the servants of God. My brothers and sisters, the viewers, how merciful is God. He is merciful for all his servants, regardless of their ethnic groups or tongues or faces. As we can see in this blessed and great sight, they have come from the ends of the world with their different tongues and faces. How spacious is his table. His table is full of abundance, and still several people are still astray and still are refraining from coming to him or answering his call. God says, "Come to me, I come to you." God is calling to people, attracting them, and they are busy with the false entertainment of world. Nonetheless, God is merciful and He is still giving His abundance to people. He still forgives people. He accepts repentance. He conceals the sins of people. On this great day, God tells all people with forgiveness, and He creates them again as if they were born. This is a description that is very interesting. He creates them again as if they were born anew. And He is very generous with them in their deeds, accepting their deeds as a reward for their response to the call of God and for the sacrifice that they have made with sincerity. My dearest brothers and sisters, what I said does not apply only to the pilgrims, but also to the non-pilgrims. For those who did not have the means to come to get pilgrimage, God bestowed on them by the fasting of Arafah, that by which God forgives the sins of past year and next year. All of us wishes to accept repentance for one sin. What about 2 years by fasting Arafah for the non-pilgrims? I pray to God that He will accept our fasting, our worships, and all the dedications and devotions that we make in terms of alms, calling, supplication. We pray to God, who is always present with us, and whose mercy is present with us. He is more merciful to us than a mother with her child. He is more merciful than the mother who is giving all her tender to her children, which is a great mercy, but still God is merciful, is more merciful than this woman. God the Exalted is generous. He's looking at those people who have come from different countries, and He returns them safe and sound, and He returns them to their countries without any sin. They come back to their homes without any sin, with their deeds full deeds, and all bad sins are forgiven. God be the Exalted. You talked about pilgrims. What about the viewers at home who haven't been able to come on pilgrimage this year and who could not afford it, who could not come in the past? Of course, God is sending them mercies as well, particularly in Arafah day, that causes the forgiveness of sins for the past year and for the next year. And also for the feast, there are lots of things that they can do. There are synons, ascertained traditions by the Prophet. They do it in compliance with the Sunnah of the Prophet, including, first of all, the prayers of the feast and then the sacrifice animal. As a matter of fact, when God sends down His mercy to people, He sends the mercy to all people, to all servants of God. That person who could not come on pilgrimage for several reasons, could be financial or it could be something else, God still is merciful with him by asking him to fast Arafah. And if he asks anything from God, God will answer him. If a person would say, God, you know my needs, you know that I want to go on pilgrimage, help me to get on pilgrimage next year. If this call to God, this supplication is correct and is sincere, God will answer your call. God knows this soul. God knows your intention. And He knows very well whether you want to do the good deeds or not. And then He will facilitate you to do so. God says, if God knows something good in your hearts, then He will give you what is good to you. So those who are sitting before the screens watching the pilgrim brothers and sisters going to the ritual sites, the blessed lads, first of all, supplicate to God that He would accept the devotions of those pilgrims, and say also, God, since you facilitated that to them, facilitate it also to me, and let me get the same blessings there. We pray to you, God. You are our creators. You are our Lord. You are the exalted. Please be generous with us to facilitate the journey to pilgrimage and give us this. Reward us by allowing us to go on pilgrimage next year, and you are able to do that. Those scenes that you can see now are from the pebble throwing bridge for the great pilgrimage date. This is the third stage of throwing the pebbles. Before we go to the break, let us talk about the sacrifice. Many people frequently ask, why is it called the sacrifice feast? Is it because of the sacrifice? Thank you, Bandar. This is a very good question. And in several cases, we notice that people do not understand that. Why is the feast called sacrifice? It's not a matter of the sacrifice itself that is legalized in this Eid, for that is in this Eid a sacrifice. It is a reminder of what we have to do. It is a sacrifice of the precious material, of everything that is expensive, cheap for the sake of God. And that we need to remind ourselves that we have all the time to sacrifice for God. God connected that to the story of Prophet Abraham to understand the real sacrifice. What enabled Abraham to do all of these sacrifice and giving? Who is the one who made him be able to sacrifice and to start sacrificing his son for the sake of God? Who is able to do so? Me, you sister Muslim. Who is this person? Which is the one that makes it? It is the love of God. It is the love that overwhelmed the heart of Prophet Abraham, that made him forget himself and present himself as a sacrifice for God. So this is the story that was narrated to us, that God merciful ordered the Prophet Abraham to slay his son, and this is what he saw in a dream. Then the devil came to him and told him, this is a nightmare, do not implement it, it is not good. And this is a reason for throwing pebbles on the Saturn. And Prophet Abraham wanted really to sacrifice his son, but God prevented him from doing so and replaced him by a sacrifice goat. So this is a sacrifice of Prophet Abraham with the precious things that he has, which is his son. But then the son was replaced by the sheep or the goat. Many people do not understand the meaning, do not understand this sublime thing, which is that when you slay the goat, you are slaying something that you can do, and this is, you take pleasure in eating it. This is what people feel, but the feeling that you have to see is that you are sacrificing a precious thing for the sake of God and nothing but for the sake of God. Can you please talk about that before the break? My brother Bandar, for the sacrifice, without much details, let us say it about a sacrifice, not about sacrificial animal. Yes. These days we can say the sacrifice is something not understood by people. If people are making the sacrifices following the example of Prophet Abraham and other prophets, I need to ask myself, what did I do for this religion? What sacrifice did I make for my religion? Prophet Muhammad, peace be with him, was to sacrifice his feelings, his ideas, his money, his breath, his soul. Everything was for the sake of God. If we imagine all of these things, Prophet Muhammad said, I swear by God who I wish I could have been killed in action, then I fight the infidels and I am killed. And he was expelled from Mecca. The Mecca closed its doors against him. He went in a place called Hamra al-Asad, and he was addressing Mecca by saying, I swear by God, you are the most beloved territory for my heart. You are the most beloved territory, and had its people not expelled me from this place, I would have never left you. Those beautiful nuances of the stories live again when we see a pilgrim coming to Mecca, standing on this great day, worshipping, dressing, putting out his clothes, and putting out with the clothes every single thing of the world, all pleasures, leaving them, proclaiming before God that I will not put any perfume, not put clothes, and not be distinguished by other people except with the order of God. He left behind his family, his sons, his children, although they might be in dear need for him. Some of his family members might be in insecurity, in problems. He sacrifices all of those things in response to the call of God. This is a sacrifice that they do just for a few days to come here in response to the call of God. And this is for the unification of the nation. So the sacrifice is not restricted only to Prophet Abraham, but we have also other prophets like Prophet Muhammad, peace be with them all. Now we go on to the break and come back to continue with our talk. Our dearest viewers, stay tuned.
Welcome back again, dear viewers. God is great. There is only one God, Allah. Praise be to God. We will continue with you in this program, Messages from Hajj, and you can call us to ask questions or congratulations in this great blessed occasion. We would like to welcome our Sheikh Ibrahim Sewad, who is our guest in this episode. He is the Imam of Bin Hamd Mosque in Jeddah. Before the break, we were talking about the meaning of Al-Adha feast and why it was called this name. Is it because of the sacrifice only, or are there different ways of sacrifice? Yes, it's not just the sacrifice of our Prophet Abraham, but Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, did a lot of sacrifice. But let me ask you the question in a different way, starting with this. Is sacrifice is only restricted to the hadi or sacrifice? Yes, may God bless you. This is a legitimate question. Is it only I felt now and I sacrifice with the precious things that I have? We should know that some brothers have do not have money, they have low salaries, but when we giving to give this sacrifice and this offering, so there is like a hidden meaning for sacrifice. When I do this sacrifice, I will be rewarded when the sacrifice comes and witness on that. So it's like a habit of giving, offering. And now I feel how this sacrifice is paid by my goodwill intention, and it should be like a habit to do it like every month. So did it come to your mind, dear brother and sister, if like to pay half of my salary next month to the poor everywhere? If there are one of my neighbors who are poor around me and they have some health problems and they need medical care and they need somebody to give them, so I sacrifice in these holy days. So this is something good that I do in my days. So sacrifice is all the time. So it's not only restricted in this sacrifice that we give or offer during pilgrimage. We need to help the poor everywhere and every time. And you remember the great situation of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq when he said to the Prophet, I give all my money. And he said, what did you leave to your family? He said, God and the Prophet is the only thing I left for them. So this is a great meaning. So when you give others, people will reward you doubles of what you paid. And there are a lot of stories that we know about the sacrifice, and our brothers and sisters know about these stories. If you pay something, sometimes your money are blessed and multiplied. So if you have a good intention to help people in this particular month, if you're concentrated more on charity and giving people, God will multiply this to you and you will be rewarded. For example, your bank account will stay the same if you pay the alms. What are the other fields for sacrifice? Are there other sacrifice? Is it by fund or by sacrificing, by slaying sheep? Yes. Is it only to sacrifice for the sake of God just by spending fund? There's a companion, Ibn al-Hamam, in Al-Badr battle. The Prophet said, go to a paradise. And this companion actually was reluctant to do this, and he was, the Prophet said to him, why did you say this? He said, the paradise that is very wide like earth and heavens, and he felt that this eternal life deserves that we sacrifice for it. So he ate only one date, and he fought for the sake of God. So he sacrificed himself. So this is the great thing to do. And a mother, for example, who is sitting at home and doing everything to raise her children and sacrifice her time, not sitting with her friends, for example, because there are women have a weekly or daily meeting. So this particular woman would meet them once a month and dedicate all time to her children, to her sons and daughters, and even she sleeps few hours to dedicate her time for her children to be raised in a good atmosphere and to be rewarded by God. This is to sacrifice your time for the benefit of your family. Yes, may God bless you. And what else? There are many examples of sacrifice. People may sacrifice their time in voluntary work. This is excellent. We know there are many people that sacrifice and exert their time and effort to help the nation, for example, to help their neighbors. In the neighborhood, sometimes people are working on voluntary basis to help their fellow citizens and neighbors and help them, and they pay from their own money in order to reconcile among the neighbors. And those people mingle with others, and you know there are different kinds of people. So when you be patient for your sacrifice for the sake of God. So calling for God is another form of sacrifice. And as you know, perhaps there are some sins or guilts that people do all the time. So this person who's dedicating his efforts and time go and advising people with nice words, soft words that is close to people, as the Prophet said, that these people will be banned from fire, from hell, because of their nice words. This is another meaning of sacrifice. So people sacrifice their comfort, their time, so that they push away these bad deeds from people. What are the other forms? We talked about like an economic issue, where you allocate some part of your salary or money, or sacrifice part of your money. We are not talking about allocating a certain amount of money, but try to sacrifice half or quarter so that you can do this sacrifice, and we'll talk about the meanings of sacrifice later on. We talked about time, and some people may sacrifice by going down in his physical fitness to the level of their children, and to educate them and teach them. Yes, this is excellent. We have a very good project in our neighborhood where somebody is living 20 kilos away from this neighborhood, and there are two brothers. And next to our mosque, there is a big space, and they did some sport activity. And you know, young people like sport activities, so they were able to attract those people who are sitting here and there and wasting their time in sins and other things. They were able to attract those people to some sport activities, and divided them into teams, and they made a sport club, and every 2 weeks they are involved in some cultural events and raising awareness, and they come together in a social way, and many people were shown the right path through these activities. So look at this sense, at this sacrifice. some say that this is not my neighborhood, I'm living away from here, I have nothing to do here, so nobody would blame me if I do not help. But if you have a genuine feeling of sacrifice, you would forget your own comforts and you work for the sake of God. Why is that? It is because you are aware of God. You have a promise with God. When we see this, we have like those who ask for people to do good and refrain from doing bad deeds. So praise be to God. So sacrifice would lead to many socio-economic things that benefit the society and our brothers. Perhaps we can address the issue of the hadi or the sacrifice, which is the aim of many people. Some sacrifice their money or part of their time, and they slay this sheep themselves. So let's talk about slaying the sheep as sacrifice. Is it just as simple, or is there are certain sacrifice in this? Actually, the sacrificing this sacrifice is a very great thing, and people who are doing or offering this. So imagine that the Prophet, when he said in a great hadith, those who sacrifice something good for themselves, and they can this can save them from hell. So this work of sacrifice would let you forget all the troubles and all the hardships that you faced, so that to be saved from hell in the hereafter. So it deserves this sacrifice. It is a great thing to sacrifice for ourselves. So it should be with good intention. Sometimes Satans may say, come to you and say, take less things or do this or that. No, this is given an offer for the sake of God. So you should be happy, and this will be rewarded by God. And don't look at price or ask many questions if you take it from here or that. So the least price. So you should forget about all these things. And there are certain terms and conditions for the sacrifice. We have a call from Norway. Ilham, yes, please. Peace be with you and with you too. I'm honored to speak with the Sheikh today. I have a question. My grandmom, may she rest in peace. I promised her that I will perform pilgrimage on behalf of her. However, I was unable to come this year, but my husband did. And he asked if somebody can do or perform this for her. And he found some Sudanese person. He was paid to go and perform this pilgrimage on behalf of her. So I would like to know, is this acceptable or not? So would she be rewarded as if she did perform the pilgrimage herself? Yes, of course. But this program is not for Fatawi, but we'll try to answer you in a brief, and you will be getting an answer for your question. So, would you answer this question? We will have to give her a brief answer. Actually, for Ilham and others, usually people say, for example, my parents or my grandparents are unable to perform pilgrimage, so we can pay somebody else to go. You need somebody that you trust them and not to deceive you. So you need to choose the right person that you trust and to give them money to go and perform pilgrimage on behalf of your parents. So this is we hope to be acceptable. So Ilham, as you heard from Sheikh Ibrahim, that what you did is rewarded, and what this person did, that you paid him to perform pilgrimage on behalf of your grandmom. We hope that God will accept this pilgrimage for your grandma. Dear viewers, stay tuned after this short break.
Peace be with you, our dear viewers again. Messages from pilgrimage. Personally, I would like to apologize for you because I might appear to be tired because of the coverage of Arafah yesterday, that we were very happy to be with you. And this is a part of sacrifice, Mr. Sheikh Ibrahim, that we spend all Arafah day to cover it as much as possible, and it's a beautiful way to all viewers around the world. So if you find me tired, I apologize for that. But it was a sense of pleasure for us yesterday to cover some of your yearning to see this place and to cope with what the pilgrims were doing and how they spent the day of Arafah. Yesterday we were from 6 a.m. until 6 p.m. until the Maghrib prayers and the starting of flowing of pilgrims to Muzdalifah. Before the break, we were talking about the characteristics of sacrifice, and you said that it must be of good intentions. Let us talk about the other traditions of the Prophet in terms of sacrifice, and what should be done by the sacrifice maker. Bandar, the sacrifice is an offering. But also, I would like to talk to viewers through the blessed Iqra satellite channel. I ask them to remember the Prophet's tradition, but to pay attention. The messenger says, nothing can be done by any human being. Look at this phrase. Nothing can be done by any human in the world. Nothing is closer to God and loved by God except the shed of blood. But the shedding of blood is something a bit strict. But here, about the sacrifice itself, about the sheep, this is very loved. It is loved by God more than any other deed. Nothing can be done by human like the shedding of the blood of a sheep. The sheep would come, or the animal would come in the life hereafter, and it will come with its hair, with its horns, and with its blood. You see the blood that is shed by the sacrifice that you make? It will first of all fall in a place close to God before it falls on the land. This is what the Prophet said. And the Prophet concluded his speech, says, and be blessed by that. He said it must be good, with good salt, with good. So try to be very noble when you do that, with noble intentions. So the same thing, whenever you do something good, it must be out of your will, out of your good will. For instance, when you go for the calling of Islam to people, do not feel annoyed. Try to feel that this is of good intentions. When you sit with your children to raise them, to arrange for them, do it for the sake of God and have the peace of mind and let it be from your heart. One day I was telling my neighbor, how many times have you said with your children? He asked, how many? He said, I don't care. My mother, their mother sits with them. I said, okay, God bless their mother, but what is your role as a father? We must sacrifice some of our time in order to sit with our children so that we can be among those people who sacrifice, not only with the animal, but also with our time. The sacrifice is an ascertained sunnah by the Prophet. And we know that it is a great thing to do, and we know now that nothing is better for God than slaying the animal for himself. And God said, and Prophet said, if you sacrifice something for the sake of God, then it will prohibit the fire from touching you. So what did the scholars say? They said it is an ascertained tradition that is not good to refrain from if you are able to do it. Sheikh Muhammad ibn Uthaymeen, may his soul rest in peace, said that a person who wants to sacrifice is allowed to get a loan, but he must commit himself to repayment, of course, so that he can get a loan in order to buy the sheep and get this deed, good deed, so that the sheep will come in the life hereafter and be an intermediate in order to ask God for his forgiveness. You remember also the sacrifice by Prophet Abraham, his son Ishmael. The sacrifice can be sheep, camel, goat. These are the types of the sacrifice. As far as the sunnah are concerned, how the sacrifice is to be done, first of all, the person of the sacrifice must witness his sheep. This is what Prophet said to Fatima. He says to her, go and witness the slaying of your animal. If you want to go there, you have to say, Bismillah, this is on my behalf and on behalf of my family. As the Prophet said when he slew 2 good goats, he said, in the name of God, this is on my behalf and on behalf of everyone of my nation who did not make the sacrifice. You can say, God, this is a sacrifice on my behalf, on behalf of my wife, on my father, my mother, if they live in the same house, of course. You are spending on them. You can say, this is on me, on my family. It means those people who live in your house. And say, in the name of God, and God is greater. And you say, all my prayers and devotions are for the sake of God. This is a great meaning here. My prayers, my ritual. This is a ritual to sacrifice the animal. All my life and death, everything is just for the sake of God. This needs sincerity. You have to be sincere when you make the sacrifice just for the sake of God. Mu'adh bin Jabal, may God be pleased with him, when Prophet sent him to Yemen, he thought he would receive a great recommendation from Prophet, a list of recommendations. But God, what did he tell him? He told him just one thing: be sincere with God and everything is good. So the same applies to sacrifice. Whenever you sacrifice something with sincerity for the sake of God, then lots of people will take the guidance from you because of your dedication and sincerity. So the sacrifice animal, as we say, it is one of the sunnah, and it's good and recommended for a person to attend the slaying of his sacrifice. As the Prophet said to his daughter Fatima, go and witness the slaying of the animal, because from the shed of the first drop of blood, all your sins will be forgiven. God Almighty may be exalted. I repeat, once you shed the first drop on the earth, you will be forgiven. And then you say that all my prayers and rituals and death and life are for the sake of God. This is what I was ordered to do, and I am one of the Muslims. This is what the Prophet said. Whenever we look into the details of the Prophet's traditions, we find that he urged how the love of a good deed, of the sacrifice, even in his children. He was telling his Fatima, daughter, go and witness the slaying of the sacrifice. This is something very great for God. It is loved by God. It's something that reaches God even before reaching the floor. Sometimes we feel sad that some people sacrifice the sheep without attending it. Maybe they do not say, they may delegate other people to do that on them. But it's better to fulfill this sunnah. Since you have spent something for the sake of God, it would be recommended to go there and witness the slaying of your animal. Even if he feels tired, if he has to wait for a long time in the slaughterhouse for 1, 2, 3 hours, go there and feel the glory of the deed that you are making, because it's a ritual that you are making for the sake of God. Something else of the sunnah is to divide the sheep, the sacrifice, into 3 parts, equal parts. It is recommended that when you divide the sacrifice, one part, this is very important, and we have to put several lines under it for emphasis. Sometimes you may have some kind of adversity with your friend or neighbor, or disagreement, differences, and sometimes disruptions, God forbid. You go to that person whom you are in disagreement with this gift from the meat of the sacrifice. So you divide it 3 types. The first one is a gift to your friends, neighbors, classmates, colleague, etc. Somebody whom you have differences with, you give him a gift. It will have a very tremendous impact. The hearts will be pured. Also, you give the other part to the poor people. People who are very poor, impoverished. Is it from the first part or the second part? The second part. The first part said it's a gift. You give it to people, to friends, to colleagues, to neighbors, etc. And one part for the poor people, impoverished, under the disadvantaged people. And the third part is for your family. You eat from this. These are the 3 parts that you have to take care of. God says in the Quran, eat from it and give food from it to the poor. Abdurrahman from Liberia. Peace be with you. Peace be with you too. I wish that you talk to us only through the phone and reduce the volume of the television. Inshallah, God willing. God bless you and bless us. I would like to ask the Sheikh. Yes, please ask. A friend of us bought a cow, but he cannot slay it himself. He cannot slay it by himself. So what's your question? But one of us will go and slay the cow. Another person will come and slay the cow. Can he says, in the name of God, for, on behalf of so and so and on behalf of the family, is it possible to say that? Is there any other question or that's all? Thank you very much, Brother Abdurrahman. The question is clear, right? Yes. If you want to explain it all for the viewers first, and then we can get the answer. Brother Abdurrahman says one of his friends bought a cow, but he cannot slay it by himself. What's the tradition of the Prophet in doing that? Of course, naturally, not all people have the ability to do that, but at least he must, he's recommended to go and witness the slaying. He wants to delegate another person in order to slay it for him. What is right to be done, this is what Abdurrahman said, it is right what he said, to tell the person who will slay the cow, say Bismillah, God is greater, Bismillah, Allahu Akbar. Do not say Bismillah on behalf of that. Say Bismillah, Allahu Akbar, and then you can say this is on behalf of so and so. and his family. But first of all, you have to start with Bismillah, Allahu Akbar. In the name of God, God is greater. So for those people who cannot slay the animal by themselves, to delegate other people, he must say to people, the slayer must say, in the name of God, God is greater. Bismillah, Allahu Akbar. Then on behalf of Fulan, of so and his family. Let us continue now with the traditions of the sacrifice, Sheikh Ibrahim. I think, Bandar, I think the traditions are now clear for people and for the viewers. If you want, we can summarize them maybe. It is recommended to witness your sacrifice animal and to say Bismillah, Allahu Akbar on behalf, on my behalf of the family, and to say that all my prayers and rituals, life and death are for the sake of God. This is what I was ordered to do, and I am one of the Muslims. And we say that it must be divided into 3 parts. The first one for gifts, and the second one for the poor people, and the third one is to reserve it for your food to eat in the family. Yesterday, one of my brothers said, Sheikh Bandar, Sheikh, can I do it all 3 together in one banquet, for instance? I said, yes, you can do that. Why not? If you cook it, and it was a good cooking, it is delicious food. You can bring the poor people to your house. You can bring your friend and neighbor and the beloved people, the nearest and dearest, and all the family, and all of you eat together. Of course, men alone, women, nothing is more beautiful than this. Yes, you can do that. And this is, in fact, a very good thing to be done. And it has an impact more than just sending the fresh meat to people. But to say to people, tomorrow we have lunch, we have dinner, and also to invite the poor people, to bring them together on one banquet. This is a beautiful thing. All of you sitting on one table and eating together, this is very, very good thing to do. So it is divided into three parts. One for giving to the poor, the second one is gift, and the third one is for the family, and you can bring them all together in one banquet. We talked in this program from the very beginning about the sacrifice and talked about how they belong in fact to the sacrifice itself, not only in the animal sacrifice but also in sacrifice in all deeds. We talked about the sunnah, the traditions of the Prophet and the obligations and duties. We will continue talking about that after this short break, and we will continue talking about the Prophet's traditions and about sacrificial animal. Stay tuned.
Dear viewers, welcome back again in this program, Messages from Pilgrimage, and we'd like to welcome again our guest, Sheikh Ibrahim al-Sheikh, the Imam of Bin Hamd Mosque in Jeddah. Sheikh Ibrahim will be with us over the coming 2 days, God willing, and will be addressing many messages that will benefit from pilgrimage. Today we're talking about the sacrifice and the offering, the first day of Eid, where many Muslims do sacrifice following the footsteps of our Prophet Muhammad and Prophet Ibrahim before him. By the end of this episode, we'll be talking about the takbir, which is part and parcel of the Feast of Adha, and to link this with the sacrifice, we know that this came from the story of the ram that came down to Abraham from heavens. So when Jibril came down, he said Allahu Akbar twice, and then our Prophet Ibrahim said there is no God but God. And when he did it twice again, while he is just driving the ram down to Abraham, Then Ismail raised his face and said, there is no God but God. From the Sunnah in this Eid is doing the takbir, saying Allahu Akbar. And the ultimate takbir for Hajj, for pilgrims, and we have the absolute takbir for both pilgrimage and non-pilgrimage. So let's address this issue and mentioning the name of God, particularly in these days. As you said, mentioning God, when we started in the first days of Dhul Hijjah, starting with a takbir, and it was like an absolute, we say it everywhere, in markets, in the streets, while driving the car, while going to work. So perhaps some people may do not or forget, but we need to remind them. So we felt that this takbir from the very beginning, and then it was for non-pilgrims after the prayer, the dawn prayer of Arafah. So it is after the prayer. The Prophet used to say after praying, I used to say, God, you're the peace. And then he started doing Allahu Akbar, saying Allahu Akbar. There is no God but God, and God is the great, and God to be praised. And the companions used to do it with him. So this is how takbir was after the prayer in the dawn of Yom of Arafah till the 13th of Dhul Hijjah, till the afternoon prayer. So after the Maghrib, no takbir. So Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. So the last takbir would be in the afternoon prayer, after the afternoon. So what do you feel when do this takbir? We feel it as a human being. We feel proud when we say God is great. God is greater than anything else. So you would not fear any creature or anybody. So God is greater than all human beings. If somebody is, for example, a human being against you, or you know that God is greater and bigger than them, their capacities, their prestige. So what you say over these 10 days, like Allahu Akbar, while you saying Allahu Akbar, all these 2 weeks, you feel that God is greater than anything else. So you fear only God, the King of Kings. So this is the first meaning, the greatness of God, that God is the greatest and able to do everything, able to give, able to not give. So this is the first meaning of takbir. This is the great meaning that we should know, and we need to plan this with our children when they go to schools. While going back home or climbing the stairs to the second floor, third floor, we tell them to say Allahu Akbar all the time. So this is a sunnah. When you go to a high place, for example, you do Allahu Akbar say, and while going down, you praise God. So this is a sunnah of the Prophet, that once we abide by this sunnah, it is an easy sunnah when climbing stairs or in an elevator or in escalators, in schools, markets, malls. It's better to say God's great, Allahu Akbar. And while driving a car, when you're going like a deep or climbing a mountain while driving, yes, God bless you. And among the meanings of takbir, or saying Allahu Akbar, it's part of praising God that comes after prayers. And there is a great hadith for this. The Prophet told us that these including Allahu Akbar and praise to be God and thank God. We say it after prayers. And the Prophet says, when you do this, they will have like an impact on the after, in the day of judgment. So you can imagine that these prayers would mention the one who did them. So it will be yours in the day of judgment. So this prayers would mention your name before the King of Kings, before the great God. So this is part of the praising that we need to do as a habit. And among the great meanings of mentioning God and saying Allahu Akbar for pilgrims and non-pilgrims alike is praying for God, pleading for Allah, saying there is only one God, Allah is the only God. So this is the pleading and the calling that millions of pilgrims in Arafah and somewhere else. This is the best calling in Arafah to say Allahu Akbar. Even Moses said that everybody says there is no God but Allah. And all deeds in one like place, the mentioning God as a great, it should be like a habit in our daily life, saying that there is one God, only Allah is the one God. And if you say that 100 times every day, it is rewarded. You will be rewarded as a protection from Satan and the devil. Because you know, most of the problems that we are facing, like diseases and problems that are plenty today, and family problems, domestic problems, are caused by Satan and the devil. So mentioning the name of God all the time is a protection from these evils. So saying God has no partners and praise be to God. So we need to use this as a daily habit and not leave it at all. So mentioning God all the time are basic things that are required in the daily life of human beings, and they have plenty of benefits. Perhaps we may give like a recipe or a message from the pilgrimage messages, and to remember among these messages mentioning God, a recipe how to like educate ourselves and raise our children on mentioning God all the time. You've mentioned some of them in this, that you need to teach your children when you go home or while climbing stairs to mention Allahu Akbar. So how can we raise our children on this? Perhaps the good beginning is knowing all these calls and pleading and asking God. So would you elaborate on this? The Prophet actually, peace be upon him, has taught his companions to even when they dress their garments, what to say, when they take off, if they go to the toilet, for example, and if they want to do everything, there are certain dua that we do. Because people may be subject to different evils. We need to trust God and not allow for the evil deeds to come to us. So nowadays, this is a message that we should remember, because we all live these blessed places and mentioning God all the time. So the tongue need to get it as a habit to mention God all the time, in the morning, in the evening, before sleeping, when we eat or drink, when we wake up, when we enter our homes. So So if you go in the name of God before you enter your house, then this house will be evil and devil free. So we need to raise our children, teach them about that. I was once with some of my brothers, and he said that he had a son, and his son went to the toilet, and he was troubled inside. And when he asked him, he said, my son, even he did not do the dua before entering the toilet. And the evil things that hit this 10 years old boy, that he does not know any dua or call. So that's why he was subject to these troubles. So I think we need to teach them. We may be the reasons for the troubles. If not, we do not teach them or raise their awareness about this, or urging them to do this dua. So did the parents think that to come every day in the morning before going to school to teach them what to say? If you like me, you need to mention God all the time, and to be as you are keen in this for this spiritual food. So we need to remind them. Some parents do teach their children. There is some recordings that their children listen to while going to school to remind their children of that. Now, children and adults have, this iPads or iPhones, and these are available. So it's recommended that the parents should remind their children to mention God in the morning, in the evening, and in school if they want to go to the toilet, or they need to pay attention about these du'as and calls. And if they see something important, like if they say their colleagues in the work better than them, or they're doing something good, they need to bless them, and their tongue should be used to telling and calling these beautiful things. So mentioning God, perhaps we are not doing our duties the right way, but when God is blessing us with this faith, so we need to remember and go back to mention God and praising God all the time. We see every now and then the holy sites where we see the easy movement, and particularly in the people's, we can see some footage of the first stage throwing pebbles. And here we would like to say that the place is not crowded, because there we have different rituals, like the different pillars of pilgrimage. So people are distributed among the 4 different functions, so there is no crowdness here. So Sheikh Ibrahim, we will be meeting you tomorrow, God willing, with a new topic, perhaps about charity. So tomorrow we will be addressing the issue of charity. Thank you, dear viewers, for being with us, and we hope to meet you tomorrow in the afternoon at 2 o'clock.